Starting group task 3. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you again. Same as last time, if there is an emergency we need to evacuate, it's just out this way. And if you do need the bathroom, just let me know, and it's just down the hall. For this lesson, we're going to be touching on all 3 of what we've done. So the open-ended questions, the types of abuse, and then how to make a report with those 2 steps. So you will need your phone for this, which you've all got out already. And with your phone, we're going to be making the report, which I will do alongside you too. So to touch on the last 2 lessons, just so we're familiar again. So the first lesson we did was the open and closed-ended questions, and we remember why they're important, don't we?
Yeah.
When making a report, so that we don't lead the child into what we want them to say.
Yeah.
We let them answer our questions. We don't, I guess, prompt them.
Yeah.
And then last lesson we touched on types of abuse. Can you remember what they are? The 5?
Sexual,
Physical.
emotional,
Yeah. Yes.
Medical?
Emotional. And
Medical, was that one?
that's neglect.
Oh.
The 5th one is sexual and domestic violence. So there's 5. There's emotional, physical, sexual, neglect, and domestic violence. So those are the 5 main categories of abuse. And now we're going to go through what we would do if we were to see that, and our next step of mandatory reporting. So a mandatory reporter is anyone really that works with children. So if you're a bus driver, you're a mandatory reporter. If you're a health worker, you're a mandatory reporter. If you're a childcare worker, if you work, say, in dancing with young kids and you see something, you're a mandatory reporter. Anything that you work with children and you see something, this is what you need to do.
So in other words, anyone that needs to have a children
Working with children's check, you need to make you a mandatory reporter.
So even though I work in childcare, if I go to a park on the weekend and see something and it's not in my classroom, do I have to report?
No, you're not a mandatory reporter.
No.
If you do have, if you think the child's in immediate danger, call the police.
Yeah.
If they're getting abused by their parent to the point of concussion or broken bones, call the police. But you're not a mandatory reporter if you're at the park.
So I'm just a parent. If
You're
I'm
just a
at the
parent,
park.
that's right, because we're not at work.
Yeah.
So I've got these scenarios that I'm going to hand out to you all. There's 3. Sorry, there you go. We don't need to put our names on these because this is just the scenarios. I'm going to sit down to do this with you too, so that you can all see and I can see. So, mandatory reporting. We've gone through the 5 types of abuse. Indicators of abuse would be bruising, emotionally vacant, constantly severely unwell, wounds near private areas, and children disclosing information. What should we do if we suspect a child is being abused? Can you remember the 4 steps?
You go to your room leader.
Write it down on paper.
That's right.
Not on media.
That's right, because it can end up somewhere where it's not supposed to. Then you go,
To the director.
That's
or
right.
If you go to the director.
and then from there you fill out one of these, which is what we're going to do.
And where does that report go to?
It
After
goes
it's
to
been
the
filled
Department of
From the health.
Education, and Department of Children's Services. To docs,
Docs.
and they take care of them. Well, after you fill out the report, it will give you what you need to do. There, I'm going to go through anyway. There's usually,
Sorry.
it's okay. There's 3 options or 4 options that will come up, which we'll see when we report it, which tell you what to do. Some might be just continue to monitor, if it's bruising, continue to monitor it, and if it, say, happens again, report it again, because that way, under the child's file, there'll be, say, 4 reports of bruising,
They'll have a history.
and then they'll have a history. So the Department of Children's Services will then say, hey, look, there's 4 reports of severe bruising we should probably take this further. So every time you report it, it'll be in their file.
So does that stay in their file? It doesn't stay in a school file?
No.
So if they were to change schools,
It'll
that
come with them.
policy.
It will always be in their file.
And how long, if you do see bruising, as you talk about
Mhm.
bruising, if it's this week, if it's 3 months down the track,
Yeah, you still report
you
it.
report it.
Yeah.
6 months down after
Report
that,
it.
you report. So it
Because it
could
was-
be over 12-month period, they
That's
might
right.
have 3. So,
Just
Mhm.
3
Yeah.
incidents,
Yeah,
yeah.
That's
Or
right.
maybe.
And it will still be in their file.
Yep.
Because if it's normal bruising, you wouldn't report it. You're only reporting excessive bruising.
bruising.
And a hand mark and things like
Yeah,
that.
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So we'll go through the steps. Step 1 is Google Child Story Reporter on your device. So we'll Google Child Story Reporter.
Sorry, Google.
Child
Yep.
Story Reporter. You come up with this page. Can I see
Okay.
everyone's?
Then do we click on it?
No, don't click anything yet.
That one?
Yeah, that's
Yep. So then you click on the first link. It should say child story as one word, and then the second word should be reporter.
So
Is that
that's
right?
what we click
That's
on.
what you click on, yep,
Click on that.
yep. And it'll come up with child story reporter community.
Mhm.
Yep. Now with that, we're going to read through our first scenario. So can I have a volunteer to read the first scenario?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. You work in a classroom that has a window that looks out into the parking lot of your childcare centre. One afternoon you look outside and see one of the children from your class and his mum walking out to their car. The little boy is screaming and crying because he was acting up when his mum picked him up. Mum is a smoker and it appears she's become extremely frustrated. She reaches down and touches the boy on the arm with what appears to be the end of her cigarette, which only makes the little boy scream louder. You're not sure if that's what's happened or not, but you see the burn mark on the boy's arm the next day at preschool. What type of abuse is this? Should you report the mother? Why or why not? 100%.
So when you scroll down on here, you'll come to this bit which says Mandatory Reporter Guide and in brackets MRG. Can everyone see that?
Yep,
So you click on that, start MRG,
yep.
which will come up with this page. So from that scenario, what type of abuse do you think that is?
That would be physical abuse.
That's right. So you click physical. Has everyone clicked physical? Yep, you click that. Yep. And then scroll down and we're going to click on physical. That's right. Everyone on the same page? Yep. So the first question is, are you aware or reasonably suspicious of a current injury? Yes or no?
Do we say yes?
You would say yes, we are. And then next. Does everyone press next? Does the child/young person or another person, including the reporter, say that the injury was caused by a parent, carer, or another adult household member and wasn't an accident?
Yes.
So yes, it was the mother, so yes, and then next. Is the injury significant?
Yes.
I would say yes, because it's a burn. Do you have other concerns about the safety, welfare, or well-being of the child or young person? I would say no, because all we've seen is a cigarette burn. If the child was, say, unwashed, same clothes,
But even though the child was crying and screaming,
that would just be because he was acting up and knew he was in
Okay.
trouble. So we would say no for this part. But if there was other signs like Like I just said, any signs of neglect, you would press yes. But for now, we're just going to say no. Because it has to be very specific to what you're reporting about. Do you have current concerns about the safety, welfare, or well-being of a class of children? That would be no, because the parent doesn't interact with the class. And now this is what we've gotten. Has everyone gotten the same page?
Decision report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be, the decision is to report immediately. So if this was really happening, we would then need to call the Child Protection Helpline or Google the Google the helpline, and then you would fill out their questions. And then you would do that also with the director.
Quite easy, don't
Yeah.
you?
So that's it there. Isn't
That's
it?
it there. You don't click anything yet.
Yep.
But with this information, you would click, if we were in a childcare setting, would click generate PDF, which it's done here. You guys don't have to do this. And this is just to put in the child's physical file at childcare.
Oh.
So it's, I guess,
So it's generated a report.
it's report, and we can say that we've reported it.
Right, and then
So
there's a
Do you get
history.
do you get a receipt, like a log number or receipt number to say that you have documented it so you can keep that in your files, or?
You would just make 2 copies of this and keep that in our files. In their
Okay.
child file, in our file. And then when you do call the child helpline, you will then get a number and a receipt from them too.
Okay.
So you'll get both.
Right,
So
okay.
you would have proof that you have taken it to the child helpline.
So this is the first
This is
step.
just the first step. So this
Okay.
isn't documented anywhere. This is just telling you what you should do and what you need to do. And then you go from there.
So depending on this, whether we take the next step. or
That's
not.
right.
So if this said no.
If this said continue monitoring, you would
Okay.
just continue monitoring unless you felt like you needed to. Like if this says to continue monitoring, that's not preventing you from still reporting it to the child helpline. This is just from the information that you have, what you should do. Like
You
if
can't get into trouble.
because you
can
can't, you will never get into
No.
trouble for reporting something that you think
Yeah.
could come across as abuse. It's always better to report it and then it be nothing than to not report it and it turns out the child was being abused and it was reported by someone else.
Yeah.
So this just tells you what you should do. So we go on to the next scenario, and to do that you would click decision tree up the top. So scroll up to the top and on the left it will say decision tree in grey. Just press that again and we'll go on to the next scenario. Just
That's a
someone,
good name, decision tree.
yeah, so it just tells you
Decision.
what
Well,
to do with the information you have. So who wants to read the second one?
I can.
Okay, you read it.
You are concerned about a 3-year-old girl that has been coming to your centre for over a year. Recently, she has been demonstrating some of the behaviours of someone that has been sexually abused. You are concerned about the child because today she told you that her mummy's boyfriend likes to play the touching game. You want the situation investigated. What do you do? Before calling community-based services, you want to do a little more investigating of your own. Is this okay? Why or why not? How does the investigation through child services work?
So with the first half of that question, we're going to report that part, but the second half is you can't investigate it on your own. You have to wait for who you're reporting to investigate that. You yourself can't get involved with the investigation. You're just telling what you know and then they take it from there. So the first half, what do you think that would be, the touching game?
Yeah, touching inappropriate
That-
parts.
That's right, so it would be sexual
Yeah.
abuse. So we'll click sexual. Let me know when we've all done that. Yep. Okay, so please choose the sexual abuse concern you have for the child or young person. sexual abuse of a child 0 to 15, sexual abuse of a young person or 16 to 17, or child/young person problematic sexual behaviour towards others. So is the child the one that's
Yeah.
doing it? So that's obviously not ours. Ours will be 0 to 15. How old is our child? 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did child make a clear, unambiguous statement of sexual abuse? Do you think that was clear and unambiguous?
The
Oh,
That's
touching
what I
game.
called it,
Yes.
the
The touching
touching
game.
The
so-
touching game.
I would say
yes.
yes. Yeah. Are you aware that a child has been sexually abused even though he/she hasn't told you? I would say no, because you
Yeah.
don't
You don't know.
know. You're just going off the touching game.
And we can't make judgment.
That's right.
I mean, it's unlikely, but I suppose it could be something different. We
Yeah.
don't know that.
That's exactly right. Are you aware of an underage marriage? No, that would be no. And then click next. Do you have other concerns about the safety, welfare, or well-being of the child/young person? I would say no.
So based on these details of the scenario, we would say no. However, if we were in
If you were in the
a
situation.
situation and we saw other different
Because you would then
things
ask
that
open-ended questions
Questions,
about who did this. Do you know why they did this? How did they? Like, you would be able to extend on it a bit
And you
more.
could say, what is the touching game?
Yeah, you could ask,
Yeah.
what are the rules of the touching game? You could get more
Who
information.
plays, how
Yeah.
many people play.
That's
Do
right.
you only play
Do you
with-
like?
Yeah.
Is it something you enjoy? That would be a closed-ended question, but you could then gauge.
Could
Do you like
Whether
the
they
touching
like
game?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you bring any, because they've said to you it's mummy's boyfriend,
Mhm.
could you ask the question, does mummy know about this game? Are you able to bring somebody
Yeah.
else in or not?
You could ask that. Does mummy know?
Right.
Has mummy played the
Play the
touching
game.
game? Yeah.
with
You
yeah.
could then ask more questions which would come up, and you could say yes for this. But with this
Okay.
scenario, it would have to be no,
Yeah.
because we obviously can't ask the child any questions. Do you have current concerns about the safety, welfare, or well-being of a class of children or young people? No, because no other children are involved. And this will be immediate report again. So we'd then take this to the Child Protection Helpline, and then they would do with the information what they feel they would need to do. And if nothing, it's at least on their file. So if somebody else were to report the same thing,
Yeah.
the Child Helpline would see that it's been there twice. Has everyone got the same response?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now just press the decision tree again. And we'll go on to the last one. So who would like to read the last one?
Chanel, do you want to look at?
There's a 4-year-old boy that you suspect is being neglected. He comes to the centre every morning and eats at least 3 times the amount of breakfast as the others. He's made some comments to you about sometimes having rice for dinner, but most evenings and weekends he gets sent to bed without food. You decide to report his dad, who's a single father, to community-based services and they investigate the case. You call CBS back a week later to see what they have found out about the 4-year-old boy and his dad. Is the Department of Social Services allowed to divulge information about an investigation to someone? If so, what are the circumstances?
So they obviously aren't allowed to divulge that kind of information, because you could just say that you're that person, but you could be the father. So they can't divulge that type of information to you. But with that first half of the scenario, what type of abuse do you think that would be?
Neglect.
That would be neglect, that's right, because you're taking away a child's food, and they're obviously starving when they come into your service. So, please choose the neglect concern you have for the child/young person. Ours would be food, because that's the most prominent one. There might be others there, like hygiene and clothing could come under it too, but
Supervision.
that's right, supervisions. But our most,
Can you tick more if you had to?
you would have to make a separate report for the neglect and a separate report for the
So you can't have like
No,
right.
you'd have to do 3 separate reports, but this report is obviously going to be for food because that's what's being taken away. But if you were concerned about, say, he's left home alone during the weekend, you would do food and then you'd come back and do another one for supervision.
So you can only just have one
Per-
specific.
per report. That's right. But if you have multiple concerns, do 3
And
and
it
then
would be better, wouldn't it? Because then there'd be
more in their name.
Right.
That's right. So, but today we're just going to do food.
Just
Yeah.
say you did, just say there were 4
Mhm.
and you did 4. It wouldn't make it any less severe, would it?
No.
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 Okay.
But if you say you did 4 and 2 came up with report and 2 came up with not report, but if you wanted to report all 4, just report all 4.
Okay.
They can't. This is just based on the
It's like a guide.
a guide. Yeah.
Right.
But if you want to take all 4, report all 4. Definitely.
So they wouldn't think you were just
Being-
imagining it
No,
if you did 4.
Because
you
they'll,
better-
because some of these you'll have to type the scenario. Like if you think a child's being sexually abused and there's actual physical evidence, it's not just the touching game. Some parts of this will get you to type in what their abuse is, and then that will show up on the worker that's looking at the case, and they'll be able to see what you've written, and then they can call you or your service and get more information, and then take it from there.
Right.
So don't be afraid to report. It's always better to report than not to report it at all. So food, and then press next. Are you a medical professional? No, we are not medical professionals. Does the child/young person report persistent hunger? Yes. Report persistent withholding of food or fluids as punishment? No. Appear thin, frail, or listless?
Yes.
They report they are thin. Frequently beg, steal, or hoard food. They don't do that because they are given the food. They just eat a lot of the food.
Okay.
Have difficulty in communicating feeding regime? No, because they were able to say that
They
I
have.
have rice, but on the weekends I'm sent to bed with no food. Are you aware that the parent/carer has refused or avoided resources that would elevate or remedy the situation? I'd say we're not aware of that. Like they could not be feeding the child because they can't afford to, and then maybe someone said, "Hey, there's food banks. You can go to places to get food," but we have to say no to that because we're not aware of that. Are you aware that the family is currently benefiting from services to address the problem? Would say no, we're not aware. And then next, do you have access to child wellbeing unit? If the answer is yes. No, we aren't any of that. We're not New South Wales Department of Education or the police force. We don't have access. We're not part of that. So we'd say no. Do you have other concerns about the safety, welfare, or well-being of the child or young person? I would say no. It's just the food. Next. Is everyone on the same page still?
Yeah.
Yeah, there.
Do you have current concerns about the safety, welfare, or well-being of the children or young people?
No.
No. Then next.
Just out of curiosity, just say they had a brother or a sister, another sibling that attended the childcare centre as well,
Yep.
and they're younger and they can't communicate. But if this is happening to the older sibling, then obviously
it's
More
happening
likely,
to the
yeah.
younger, of
Do we
course.
document that as a group or?
As well, then yeah, you would say yes as a
Okay.
group, and then that would then take you to a page where you can describe what's happening. But if it didn't give you that option when completing the, I guess, form for child services, you could add that in. This child has a sibling, they're non-verbal as they're under, like they're young, but we assume this is also happening to them.
Okay.
So this one is different. This is if you think the child or young person is in immediate danger, phone 000 immediately. But other than that, you would just consult with professional service. So this would be discuss possible actions with other practitioners such as alternative referral services. So with this part, this is what your supervisor would do. You wouldn't do this, but they would get into contact with supervisor or colleague, a child protection consultant. They would kind of take this in a different direction of like, is the parent suitable? Is he a suitable parent? Should they be taken away? They would do this part. You wouldn't do this part.
You've done your part.
You've done
by
your part,
reporting.
and now the
Yeah.
supervisor does their part by reporting it further.
So when you're actioning this, should you actually do it in consultation with your supervisor?
That's right, until you don't need to anymore, because you have all the information. So you would do this with them until they no longer needed you, or the person they're getting in contact with doesn't need you.
Okay.
So they would call on you for information, but you wouldn't be doing this yourself.
Okay.
Okay. So, if at the moment I'm not a room leader, but if I was to come to a room lead, if I became a room leader, obviously I don't do the first step, so I'd go straight to the director if
That's
I was
right.
a room leader
If you
and
was
saw
a-
this. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're the room leader, you see this, you obviously don't tell anybody yet.
Right.
You'd go straight to your supervisor.
Okay.
And then you would make your team aware of the situation. So if they see anything, they don't think, oh, it's just this, I'm not going to report it. They'll think, oh, well, there's already been a report made. I'm going to go to my room code, document it,
Okay.
and then follow the steps. So you would let your room know, but no one outside your room really needs to know. It would just be
Yeah.
your room.
Yeah.
Question, what would happen if I make a report,
Mm-hmm.
we go through the process and then it comes out where it's false,
Mm-hmm.
does that come back on me?
No.
Or is it- no.
It wouldn't come back on you. It's better to report
Yeah.
than not to report at all. You would never be in trouble for reporting.
So it's probably very similar to administering first aid.
That's right.
You never get in trouble for administering
No.
first aid.
You would never.
Better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's okay. Does anyone else have any questions before we leave for the day? No? Everyone's comfortable with reporting, no one has any more questions?
No, it's good to know that you don't get into trouble.
No.
if
You would never get into trouble for reporting. It's always best to report if you have a suspicion. And if it's wrong, great. If it's right,
Absolutely. The best scenario, I suppose, is that you are wrong.
that's right.
Alright. And it's a very easy process.
Yeah, with this,
Like,
it tells you what to do.
Step by step.
And
So
this
it's
isn't
very
recorded
easy.
anywhere. Like,
Yeah.
this isn't recorded. The
Yeah.
next step, the reporting it,
becomes
that's
a
recorded. This
Okay.
is just giving you a guide of if you're unsure what to do. If you ever want to go straight and report it without this tree, you can. Like if you're, like you really want to report it, you're not going to
Really
get,
confident. in
yeah,
knowing that
and you know it's neglect.
Yeah.
You've seen it before. This is the third time. Just
Yeah.
go straight and report it.
If it does get reported, does it come back to the childcare centre or is it
It would come back to the childcare centre.
the childcare
Yes.
centre, that's
Yeah.
where it, right?
That's where it originated from. And then they'd come to your centre, ask your supervisor who reported, like, they'd go through those steps with the
So they
centre.
investigate it further.
They
Thank
would
you.
investigate it, yeah.
Cool.
If a child ever only has one, I guess, some situation under their name, it's sad, but they usually don't report it. So that's why it's best to always document it. Because if a child has 5 instances, the department is more likely to investigate that. Whereas is if a child has one instance of like suspected bruising, like they're obviously they're not at the top of their list, which is sad. Like if a child has lots of bruising, it's sad. Like obviously something's happened. But if a child has been sexually abused, they have been neglected, like they're delayed, you've got to go through like the steps. Like obviously they're going to report that first rather than the child that has some bruising on their back. Whereas if they had lots, the department would take that more seriously, which is sad. Like it's the child's still being abused, but it's more the severity between child A and child B.
Yeah, so if they only had one report,
Mhm.
but it was a really severe report, they take that seriously.
They would take that
Like
seriously.
if they came in and it was really serious
Because
and it
usually,
was obvious.
if it is really serious, there'll still be more than one. Because the child will be suspected for neglect,
Oh yeah. I
sexual
see.
abuse. So
Yeah.
there will be more reports because you
Yeah.
can only select one for each report.
Yes, that's true. Okay, yeah.
But that's the end of the lesson. Does anyone have any more questions?
No, that was
No.
great.
Thank you
All
very much.
good. Well, I'll see you guys next time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.